Hey everybody, Kimberly here, and yep, you guessed, I'm in my new filming nook. It's not done yet. I still have some steps to accomplish, but I've already done the first one, so I couldn't wait to film here and show you a little bit of the new space. More particularly, you'll notice it's the paint color behind me, so super excited. But really, what I'm here to share with you are 3 games for my perfect game night. Now, these 3 games won't take you more than 2 hours to play, and they are perfectly themed, so stay tuned and check out the games that will give you some personal growth and get you in touch with nature. First game that I want to start with in this perfect game night is Living Forest. I finally got my copy, I've already played it, and I have talked about on this channel how much I really enjoyed the Kenner Spiel des Jahres of 2022. This is a really lovely themed and lovely mechanicked, if that's a word, game. I'm gonna say it is, because there are a lot of things that make this game super fun and play between 30 and 45 minutes. So players are going to take on the role of a spirit, and they're going to try to grow trees in their personal player area. They're going to collect these special flowers, and they're also going to try to put out fires because they are saving the forest. And this is for 2 to 4 players, and I think it works really well whether you have 2, 3, or 4. I do think for the rondel, the round chase feature of the spirit figures, I think it works really well the more players you have. So I will say that particular part of it works a little bit better. And I think that this game offers so much lovely competition because what you're doing is you're going to turn over your player deck, and this is a deck builder, and you're going to turn over cards until you say, I don't want to do any more because it's a press your luck. You are going to see how far can you go to receive as many of these helpful symbols that you can activate on your turn. And so if you don't bust, if you don't flip over the next card that would give you your 3rd bad symbol, then you get to have 2 different actions of all the ones that you have collected in your animal cards in your current display. Now, if you do bust, you just get 1 action of whichever one you want to activate. So it's not the worst thing. Makes me feel like Quacks. In the Quacks of Quedlinburg, if you don't bust, you get to have both victory points and an investment to buy more of the tokens. But if you do, you get one of those 2 choices. So it really has just a lovely feature of if you do try to go a little bit too far, you just get half of the benefit. So I really, really like that feature of turning over your cards and gaining more of those symbols. Now, when it comes to your turn, you can do one of those choices if you bust, or 2 if you don't. And they are really, really cool things like using water to put out fire, or using your magic symbols to move on the wheel so that you can surpass players and gain one of their 3 tokens if they still have all 3 of their starting tokens. You can also invest in trees that put down on your player area, and they will give you bonuses when you reach columns or rows. It's just fantastic investing in animal cards that come into your hand whenever you shuffle your deck and draw them. And so you're growing this deck and you are trying to end the game. And if you can do one of the 3 ways to end the game, you win. And it's kind of fantastic because you have to always keep your eyes on the other players to see, well, what are they really going for? Are they collecting fire tokens? Because if a player collects 12 fire or more, they're going to trigger the end of the game. And if no one else has triggered one of the end game conditions, they win. Now, so 12 fires, collecting those by putting them out with water is one way. There's also a tile you start with that has a flame token on it, which can be stolen, but also can count towards your fire count. Another way is by collecting 12 different protective trees, and players begin with 1 tree that's wholly unique to them. So when you surpass someone on the track, you might take their tree to give you even one more unique type of tree in addition to the ones you can buy from the market. And then the last way that you can trigger the end of the game and win is by having 12 of those sacred flowers showing in your display on your turn. And so if you can have 12 or more of those pretty little pink flowers out there, then you might just win the game. Now I say potentially win because if two players trigger, let's say one triggers with the sacred flowers, and in the same round another player triggers with the fire tokens, then what you're going to do is add up all 3 of the win conditions, and that sum is going to be the winner. So whoever has the highest of all 3 conditions of flowers, trees, and fire tokens. This game is a race. It is a full-on race, and I think it's just a clean game where you're always, again, paying attention to what the other players are doing and how they are really navigating grabbing cards and adding those cards to their deck, how they are investing in flowers and how they're investing in trees. Are they putting out too many fires? Are they really taking advantage of first player and then really getting a lot of rain cards that allow them to put out all those fires? It's just a dynamic game and a lovely one. I see why it won the Kennerspiel des Jahres, and that's the way I want to start my game night. As a way to segue between my first game, Living Forest, and my second strategy game of the night, I've got Agropolis. This is a wonderful 15-minute kind of cooperative palette cleanser for the night. I think it's a great way to bring everybody together because this game is 1 to 4 players, and again, you're working together to build this kind of ranching area with crops and fields and farms and stuff, and it's just got a lovely growth theme, which is part of my theme for this game night, and it's cooperative. So players are going to play down these cards one at a time, going around in turn order, growing this area much like you see in Sprawlopolis, but this theme is agriculture. That's why it's Agropolis. And in these games, you are going to have 3 different criteria that you're trying to meet for your scoring conditions. And so those are just randomly turned over. They're on the back side of those cards that show the grid of 4 different crops, 4 different images. And then you're going to try to place those cards out strategically in order to meet your win condition. It's the perfect in-between game to play during my growth and nature-themed game night. And lastly, to end my game night, I want to play Evergreen. I just recently got my hands on this and was just really blown away because I don't necessarily get into abstract games, but this game has just enough for me to really grasp onto and to strategize with. So I'll tell you why I think it kind of overcomes my abstract hurdle. Now in Evergreen, this is for 1 to 4 players. You are going to be planting down all of these different trees and shrubs and lakes all over this board that has different biomes pictured. And it's really important that you kind of grasp that the biomes are going to be places that get scored at the end of the game based on how fertile it is. Now, the very beginning of every round begins with players drafting one of these cards from an open market area. And it does matter who goes first because first pick, kind of like you have in King Domino, where first pick really gets you exactly what you want, but it may actually lose you the first place marker depending on what the other players take. So you take one of those cards, and those cards are super, super interesting because there's so many different features on them that you have to keep in mind. The first one is, if you take a card, the card is not going to be going up to the play area that is collective for everyone, because there's a symbol at the top that might have a skull symbol, but it might also have circles, and that's the fertility of that land. And every land is going to have some level of fertility, and that's going to be the multiplier at the end of the game that you have your big, big trees multiply against in the biome that matches the number of fertility symbols. So when you take a card, that card doesn't go to the top. The last card that's not picked every single round goes up to the top. So you're trying to leave cards, but if you're earlier in player order, other players may take the card you actually wanted to go up to the top. And so maybe not going first and being able to select the card that does go to the top because you're the last player to pick, that could be really advantageous or strategic for you. So that's one whole thing that you have to keep in mind, and that has nothing to do really with the card itself, because that card is going to give you a main action and a bonus action. So the main action says you can do one of 4 things, and this is at the bottom of every player's card. Now the first action of those 4 is by planting 3 sprouts. You are able to kind of put down just the beginning of a tree. It's not a tree yet, it has to grow to middle size, which is kind of like the round, more circular one. And then there's a full-size tree, which is a darker green and looks more kind of like an evergreen. And so you have 3 stages of growth with trees: sprouts, middle trees, and then big trees. If you don't want to plant 3 sprouts in the color region that's listed, you could grow some trees from sprouts to middle trees or from middle trees to big trees, but not the same one. You have to pick 2 different ones to do the growth. The third action, C, that you can choose to do is add 1 sprout and grow a different sprout to middle, middle to big. Again, those are your different, growth chains. And then lastly, you can simply ignore your card biome type and simply grow anything anywhere. And that one is kind of like when you're in a pickle and you just can't get the biome type you need. So that's just the main action. So when you take a card, you're looking at the type. It's the biome that you're really interested in, but then there's also a bonus. And the bonus is connected to the top part of every player's board. And when you get a bonus, you'll move your marker up a space and then look at how many times you get to do that bonus action. And that's the key. That's the interesting part, because if you take the same kind of bonus action, one after the other, or in close succession, you get to the top of your kind of moving chart, and then you start to get to do it really, really well. So whenever you take that same thing, you get to do it more. And doing something more is obviously more efficient. So the bonus is really, really cool. Now, there are 4 different scoring phases. They're interim scoring. After the sun, you essentially take 5 cards your very first round. Then the sun is going to move. And then in that round, you're going to take 4 cards from that drafting area, one at a time. Players take them, and then you add them to your area, do your action, do your bonus. The sun is going to move again, and you're going to have 3 cards you get to take, and then the sun will move again, and you'll be able to only take 2 cards that last round. And after each time where you take your cards before you move the sun, you get to score in 2 different ways. The first way is, what does the sun see? And your trees are going to be a certain height, and they might block things behind it. So you have to be really careful about the direction that you plant your trees. But then no, the sun is going to move, and it's going to go 90 degrees clockwise, and now your sun is looking from a different direction. And it's going to look at all the trees that are visible, and they're going to score those. So a tall tree will block the 2 spaces behind it, no matter what's behind it. And so tall trees are pretty tall, and they take up some of the sun, so you don't want to put small stuff behind those tall trees, but you can put short stuff in front of tall trees, like it's like the second growth from a sprout to a middle tree. And you are only counting the trees at this point, the green bushy tree and then the tall dark green tree. But the kind of middle tree will block 1 space behind it. So if there are things behind that are the same height or shorter, it's going to block it. So you have to be really careful about that blocking and about the scoring. So the middle-sized tree, which is the green round one, scores you 1 point for the sun seeing it, and the tree that's the tall green one scores 2 points if the sun can see it. So that's going to be the first thing that you get to score. at the end of each round before you move the sun marker. The second thing is your largest collective area of trees, which is your forest. You're building a forest and you want those trees to be connected to each other. And again, sprouts don't count. Now, there is a thing called a bush, and a bush is going to allow you to connect your trees and connect sections so that you can count it as a point. So there's 1 point for every tall tree or middle tree that's in your forest, and then the bush can connect sections. And the bush doesn't get in the way, and it doesn't get not counted because something is shading it. So bushes are really, really strategic. So those are the two different things you're going to score, your largest forest area and what your sun sees from the direction that it's at. And you do it again, again, again. And then at the end of the game, after you do your scoring that you do normally, you will look at what is the fertility for each of the areas. Now, how many points do I get to multiply my big, big, tall green trees in each biome against? So let's say I've got 4 big green trees in the swamp area, and the swamp has 4 fertility circles. Each one of my trees is going to be worth 4 points, and I will move my marker up 16 points on my scoring track. And the player who has built the best forest and really taken advantage of the sun is going to win the game. This is a really fun, clever game. It kind of makes me feel like it's got the king domino with the open drafting, the card in the market area that goes with the player turn order. But then it also has that feel of mariposas, where as the game continues, you get fewer and fewer actions. So you start with 5 cards and you're putting out all these sprouts and growing all these trees, and it's really fun. And then the next round you only get 4 cards. And then you get 3 cards. And then the last round you get to draw 2 cards, and that's it. And then the game is over. So it kind of like winnows down to a nice point. It is perfectly timed. It's such a lovely game. And I feel like anybody can pick it up, and it's got a lovely theme. So this is the way I want to end my game night, is with this game. Thanks for joining me in my fantastically themed and perfectly fun games. I've got Living Forest followed by Agropolis, ending the night with Evergreen. Wow, I love it. And you better believe I'm going to take this to my game night at my college. I just recently started a staff and faculty and administrative only, no students allowed, game night. So I'm going to bring these games and we're going to have a fantastic time playing them. I hope you do too. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and if you've played any of these games, and maybe what your favorite nature-themed game is. All right, everybody, I'll see you later.